here at the pad, and our closeout crew has departed. So the rest of it's just getting ready to go. So good luck. Godspeed to all of you.
Copies all, Jeff.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
And CDR entity.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Reed, we're done with the SEO cards now, and we're going to go ahead and do that cleanup on your screen. So we'll go ahead and work that.
Understood.
We may do a refresh too. I'll find out.
Liberty, plus 2 solid rocket boosters, and at the top, the Orion spacecraft, where the astronauts will live and work and in which they will return to Earth. Right now, the crew of 4 is already on board. NASA Commander Reed Wiseman, NASA pilot Victor Glover, NASA mission specialist Christina Cook, and Canadian Space Agency mission specialist Jeremy Hansen. They've been in quarantine for about 2 weeks now. Earlier today, they observed a pre-launch tradition for American astronauts, a last-minute poker game that has to continue until the commander loses a hand, the superstition getting rid of all the bad luck before launch. After observing a quarantine of about 2 weeks, they suited up, donning the bright orange survival system suits that they'll wear for the launch. The four emerging in public, sharing a final goodbye with their families, and boarding a transport vehicle that delivered them to the launch pad. They're now waiting, strapped into their seats. After lifting off, they'll orbit Earth for a day, then slingshot some 4,000 miles past the far side of the moon and around it before re-entering Earth's atmosphere and splashing down into the Pacific Ocean off of California. NASA last aimed for the moon with the Apollo program in 1969. Apollo 11 made the first historic landing. Astronaut Neil Armstrong, the first human to set foot there. 650 million people around the world watched the moment on live TV. The final Apollo mission was Apollo 17 in 1972. More than 50 years later, NASA's Artemis program has a more long-range goal to eventually build a permanent outpost on the moon. Today's Artemis II mission will test the spacecraft, the rockets, and the life support systems that could make that vision a reality. The excitement is building, the countdown is underway, and ABC's Gio Benitez is at the Kennedy Space Center for us. Gio, how's it looking?
You know what, Lindsay? This is when I start feeling those butterflies, not because we're on the air around the world or perhaps even around the universe, but because that countdown clock is now approaching 20 minutes. And it is very exciting because this is when they're doing the final checks. In a moment, we will find out from launch control if they vote to go or no go. That is a critical moment because they go around the room asking each person if it is a go. And if someone says no go, they have to stop and they have to figure out why. So it's very, very important to make sure that everyone is safe. Now, you are watching this on television, but at the same time, if you are in the Southeast, you will be able to see this in person as well. And I want to show you this map right now because it shows you within the first minute, you're going to be able to see it in so much of the Southeast and there, especially in Florida, you're going to be able to see this as it goes out and exits Earth's atmosphere. And if you are in Florida, I want you to grab your phone, open up Disney Plus or Hulu, and open up ABC so that you can watch that live and hear our commentary as you see that launch into space. But when this launches into space, it will be historic because they will go farther than any other human has gone before. They will eventually whip around the moon and then back to Earth. The entire mission taking 10 days, 685,000 miles traveled. Just incredible for these four incredibly smart astronauts who have spent their life working on this kind of mission, perhaps even taking us one day to Mars and beyond.
That is the ultimate goal here. Gio, your excitement is palpable. Thanks so much. We'll be going back to you, of course. Weather is always a key variable in a successful launch, and right now conditions appear to be good. WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg monitoring the forecast for us. You say that if this doesn't happen, it likely won't be because of weather.
Mother Nature wants this to happen. I mean, the stars are aligned for this trip around the moon. There's no question about it. And we look at the conditions, and if you've been following Geo all day long, there was more cloud cover near the Kennedy Space Center, and those even some few showers near the Kennedy Space Center, and that has cleared off to the west, and behind that sinking air is inhibiting cloud cover. So it's really perfect timing right now, and you really need to check off all these weather guidelines. No strong winds, no precipitation, no lightning in the area, and also cumulus clouds. There is some specific data with that too. You can see we've checked off the temperatures and the light winds and no rain chance, but it's the partial cloudiness. The clouds can't be that thick. They can't be too close by. And of course, you can't have thunderstorm remnants. We're really not worried about that. So throughout the launch window, you're looking at prime temperatures in the 70s, light wind, limited to no rain threat, and just some scattered clouds around right now. So just even looking at the latest satellite, Lindsay, just a few scattered clouds. I think we're going. I don't think weather is the inhibitor.
And of course, NASA has specific weather rules for a reason. Tell us about what happened with Apollo 12.
So 1969 in November, no thunderstorms in the area, so saying, okay, we're good to go. Launch the rocket, but it becomes a conductor in the electrified cloud, allows a discharge. Lightning strikes twice, navigation problems, command module issues. It was rectified, thankfully, but that changed everything in terms of the guidelines with lightning.
All right, thank you so much, Lee. And we are still slated for a 6:24 liftoff. After the engines ignite, there will be several key events. The first 8 minutes, the most critical of the launch. Seconds before the Artemis II countdown clock hits 0, the rocket's 4 engines ignite by the ignition of the 2 solid rocket boosters. The nearly 6 million pound vehicle clears the launch pad. And let's take a look. Seconds before the Artemis II countdown clock hits 0, the rocket's 4 engines ignite by the ignition of the 2 solid rocket boosters. The nearly 6 million pound vehicle clears the launch pad, propelled by one of the most powerful rockets ever created. The rocket then performs what's called a roll and pitch maneuver to align the craft with the intended flight path. A little over a minute after liftoff, the vehicle reaches max Q, or maximum dynamic pressure. This is the point where the air is hitting the rocket the hardest. About 2 minutes in, the solid rocket boosters separate from the rocket and splash down in the Atlantic Ocean. At around the 8-minute mark, it's time for main engine cutoff. The rocket's 4 engines shut down for good, and the Orion separates from a bright orange rocket, which will splash down too. The capsule is then boosted into a higher orbit through a series of burns before separating from Orion. The astronauts will then spend a day in orbit performing system checks and doing a flight demo before heading to the moon. NASA has made remarkable advances in space science since the Apollo moon mission 5 decades ago. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has a closer look at the rocket systems that will lift the Artemis astronauts into space and will sustain them during the flight.
Lindsay, let's start with the Space Launch System, or SLS. The rocket is the most powerful rocket to carry humans into space. On each side are the solid rocket boosters. These 2 alone deliver 75% of the total thrust at liftoff. This big orange tank in the center, that's the core stage. It's the backbone of the entire rocket. And at the bottom are 4 RS-25 engines. Inside this part of the rocket are more than 730,000 pounds of supercooled liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Altogether, the rocket produces an astonishing 8.8 million pounds of thrust. Moving up, you have the upper stage, or ICPS. This engine will send the astronauts into a high Earth orbit. And here's where the crew lives. The Orion spacecraft, with its 330 cubic feet of cabin space for the 4 astronauts over a 10-day mission. Attached to Orion is the service module, the workhorse behind the scenes. Power, life support, propulsion, the service module handles all of it. And its engine will push the crew on a path around the moon. Finally, right at the top is the launch abort system. If anything goes wrong during the ascent, this system fires in a fraction of a second, pulling Orion and the crew away from the rocket to a safe distance before parachutes bring them back to Earth. Lindsay.
All so exciting, Stephanie. Thank you. Joining us now is former astronaut Susan Kilrain, an aerospace engineer, a U.S. Navy officer who piloted 2 space shuttle missions. So, Susan, thanks so much for joining us. Take us inside these final minutes before launch. What are the 4 astronauts on board doing and feeling right now?
Well, time is getting close. So they're actually now hyper-focused on analyzing all the data that they have in front of them, because they have to be prepared to react in emergencies, and so they're just not along for the ride. They have to be prepared. So if they've been chattering and even taking a nap, they're awake now.
And joining us now is astrophysicist Hakeem Alushehi. Thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense, because we have already been here before more than 50 years ago.
Yes.
Why is it so important to return now?
There are so many reasons. The technologies are new, things are moving ahead, so there are pertinent issues here on Earth that have to do with resources, that have to do with exploration. There's questions we need to ask, and we want to have a permanent presence on the moon. There are geopolitical implications. We have China, we have independent agencies, companies trying to move in now, and so this exhibits technological leadership.
Dr. Alushehi, thank you so much, and we want to just take a moment to listen in to launch control.
CCL. Yes, sir. Reconfigure ARS primary loop ISO valves. Copy, that's in work. And CDR, OTC, Orion to Earth 1.
Go.
ARS loop ISO valves are being closed at this time.
Integrity copies.
NGDLP.
Go.
Yes, I had a discussion with sea ice and with MER manager regarding the observation the sea ice had a few minutes
Susan,
ago.
you can hear what we're hearing. Give us a
photos
sense of what this all
It's been there
means.
since 2025. MER manager has had a chance to review the findings, and they do not have any constraints from either a sea ice or MER manager perspective.
Yes, they're going through their normal procedures.
Director,
they're stepping through all the procedures that have to be done before they get the command to go up into space. And they're polling the room at the same time. Everybody's given a go. So this is the final stuff. It's a busy, busy time, especially for the commander and the pilot.
Dr. Oluche, I want to bring you back in here. This time around, it's not about flags and footprints. What does this mission test?
Yes, this mission tests sustainability. Ultimately, we want to get up to a cadence where we can redo it over and over again. We want to have a permanent presence on the moon. At first, we were just illustrating we can do it. Now we're setting up infrastructure, and we're going to take advantage of it and drive economy.
The Artemis launch will certainly be a spectacle. Hundreds of thousands are gathered right now along Florida's Space Coast to watch it live. ABC's Mola Lange is with the crowds at Veterans Memorial Park in Titusville, Florida. What's the atmosphere like there, Mola?
Well, Lindsay, it's electric. You know, we're here with a few thousand people. These crowds have been growing throughout the day. Folks want this beautiful vantage point, Kennedy Space Center, just across the Indian River Lagoon there. And folks getting this vantage point to the launch and to history. That's why so many people have come out here to witness history. You know, we've talked to folks who were old enough to remember the Apollo missions of the 1960s and 70s. I talked to two brothers, one from Kentucky, one from Alabama, who made the trip over here. They say they remember being fascinated, being captivated as kids by those Apollo missions. And this was a chance for them to kind of reconnect to that fascination and that wonder. We talked to people who were not alive during the Apollo missions of the 60s and 70s who wanted to kind of be a part of this new chapter of NASA history, bringing their kids out here to create some long-lasting, lifelong memories, Lindsay.
Dr. Mola, because anyone who is under the age of 55 years old has never witnessed this kind of moment before, so certainly magical. And Susan, we want to bring you back in here because it's our understanding right here, you see that the clock has stopped at T-minus 10 minutes to go. The crew is doing a hold. What do you imagine could be happening right now?
Well, Lindsay, I'm not 100% sure that they cleared up all the issues with the battery, sensor, not sensor, if they've gotten approval up through the chain of command to go, or possibly there is another issue that they're looking at. But this is a planned hold time. There is nothing wrong with holding at this time. They can hold all the way up until 10 minutes before the 2-hour window closes. And so it's still going.
So you were referencing a battery issue. Apparently there are two batteries. One battery was showing high voltage. They were troubleshooting that earlier, trying to determine if it was a sensor issue or a bad battery. Apparently that has been resolved. But Susan, at this point, we're hearing that there's a transponder issue. What could that mean?
You know, transponders are typically the way that they know where it is at any given time, airspeed, altitude, that sort of thing. And so my guess is, and this is just a guess, there would be a backup to that as well. So they'll have to go into discussions. Is it really a problem? Is it a problem that we can live with? You know, but is it also something that affects reentry and splashdown? So I don't know the exact transponder that they're referring to, but they have an hour and 50 minutes to figure it out.
And so are you feeling confident? Obviously, you don't know exactly what the issue is, but a little while ago, you suggested that you felt it would still be all systems a go.
Yeah, I still feel like they're going to talk through this and work it out.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan. We'll be coming back to you in a little bit. Dr. Oluche, I want to just ask you, what makes Artemis II different from the Apollo?
Well, it's a very different mission. Nowadays, we are now trying to take advantage of what the moon offers. Those are opportunities for expanding our economy. There are opportunities for exploration, and we want a permanent base that can be a staging area where we can go deeper into space. We aspire to mine asteroids. We aspire to have a permanent presence on Mars. And who knows what future generations will do, but this is that first step in humans becoming a true spacefaring society.
And Gio, same question to you. What makes this so unique from past space exploration?
Okay. Perfect.
Gio, not sure if you were able to hear me just then, but just your same question to you. What makes this unique from past space exploration?
You know, one of the things, Lindsay, is that actually flight termination system, and they were actually looking at issues with that a little earlier today. They also said that they resolved that. But when we're talking about the space shuttle that so many of us grew up watching, what was so unique about that is that you had this spacecraft that was attached to a rocket on the side. You'll notice right there, and you're looking at Artemis right there, you actually see the rocket with the capsule on top. That's really an old system, right? And the reason why it's so safe and tried and true is because if there is an emergency, you can actually hit that abort button and you can separate the spacecraft from the rocket before that rocket explodes and get everyone safely away from it. So that's really, really critical to have, because with Space Shuttle, you didn't have that kind of option. It was attached to the rocket. It made something like that very, very difficult. This is a much safer system for these astronauts. So they were looking at that flight termination system, because also what's important here is that they need to make sure that this rocket goes where it's intended to go, because if it starts going in another direction, they need to be able to self-destruct it safely. Lindsay?
All right, Gio, thanks so much. And it does sound like they are going to go. We do want to listen in. The flight director is pulling all the people in launch control to see if it is, in fact, all systems a go. Let's listen.
Safety consoles go.
LPE.
LPEs go.
RTD.
RTDs go.
Houston flight.
Houston flight is go.
Rock.
Rock is go.
And CDR.
Crews go.
Copy that. Thank you, Reed. And Launch Director NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
All right, NTD, I copy all. At this time, I'll perform my poll. Attention on the net. This is the Launch Director performing the final poll for launch. Verify no constraints and go for launch. EGS, Program Chief Engineer.
Artemis Chief Engineers are go.
Copy, thank you. EGS, Chief Safety Officer.
The Artemis CSOs are go.
Copy, thank you. Range weather.
Launch weather is go.
Thank you, LWO. And Artemis MMT Chair.
MMTs go.
Thank you, John. And Integrity Launch Director.
Good to hear your voice, Charlie. PLT.
Thank you, Charlie. This is Victor. We are going for our families.
MS1.
This is Christina. We are going for our teammates.
MS2.
It sounded like we just heard the pilot, Victor Glover's voice there. Susan, I want to bring you back in here as a former NASA astronaut. Just give us a sense of what the astronauts are doing in the final moments before launch.
I copy that.
Well, they just are hearing the most magical word. Everybody's reporting in go for launch. So time will actually compress for them. The next few minutes are going to go very quickly once they start that clock back up.
You are the youngest person, one of only 3 women to pilot the space shuttle. What's your reaction to seeing the first woman operate this mission?
You know, it's great to see, one is Charlie Blackwell-Thompson being launch control director. It's great to see Christina Cook being on the mission and being the first woman to go to Moon. But really, I think that the crew said it best, that we're looking forward to a time when we're all just astronauts. We're not black astronauts, white astronauts, women or men. We're just astronauts.
Fair enough, Susan. I want to listen in one more time.
Start and verify recordings of our Orion cameras.
Copy.
Okay. Well, there you heard it.
RSR, NTD.
RSR.
They're getting ready to start terminal count.
arm rotation enable at this time, please.
It's currently at T-minus 10 minutes. Once we wrap up this last bit of work,
SNA arm rotation enable complete.
we're going to start that clock.
Copy that. Thank you.
Integrity crew, close and lock visors.
Gio, give us a sense as we await the clock to start the countdown again. How is the crowd responding in this moment?
It was transitory.
Well, Lindsay, I can tell you the moment we heard all those go, 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 every time we heard that, we heard the crowd cheer here because they are excited. A lot of these folks who are here with me at the Kennedy Space Center have been working on this for years, and so they are very excited to see this launch. The last time we saw this launch was actually back in 2022. There was nobody on board. This time, there are 4 incredible astronauts who are on board, and they're going to be going off into space. And so everyone here is incredibly excited to see that happen.
Dr. Oluseyi, how is the moon really a proving ground for Mars? Because we know there are a number of stages here, and this may be step number 2 in a multitude.
Absolutely. So living outside of the Earth's atmosphere and outside of its magnetic protective magnetosphere is a big deal. Living under radiation, living on the lunar environment with that incredibly difficult dust you have to deal with on the lunar surface are just challenges that you cannot simulate very well here on Earth. So they have to go there. We have to put boots on the ground. We got to do the real experiment. And then hopefully living on the surface of Mars should be a little easier than living on the surface of Moon because it does have an atmosphere.
ECL time estimate?
You will likely remember in 1970, Gil Scott-Heron wrote a really scathing poem about the inequality, about essentially saying, why spend billions of dollars going and leaving this planet when people are not able to pay their rent and struggling paying medical bills back here on Earth? A number of people really have that question. How do you answer that?
Well, first thing I want to say is I saw Gil Scott-Heron live at the Kimball's East in Oakland many years ago, and that was amazing. But, you know, that is a question that comes up often. It can look like a waste of money, but in reality, it is an investment in our future. What we see is that those nations that invest in cutting-edge technologies and cutting-edge science, they are ultimately the winners. When Albert Einstein won his Nobel Prize, when he described the photoelectric effect, he couldn't tell you that in the future this was going to result in the smartphone, right? And in much the same way, as we undertake these endeavors, which are an investment, they do return to America and to the nation in terms of technologies, in terms of new economies, then those new generations are going to reap benefits that we can't even imagine. And the other thing is how economics works. It's not exactly the case that if you spend money, you're taking it from somewhere else, right? We see that. Big pots of money comes up when needs come up. But this is just less. NASA's budget is less than 1% of the federal government, and it is an investment that pays off big time.
All right, and we're clear from cutoff.
Give us a sense, too, because when we look back to the Apollo mission in the 60s, and that was, as you know, a very unsettled time. We believe in the meantime they are about to resume the clock in a moment. But it was a very unsettled time, obviously, in the 60s, as it is today. Some people say that 1968, and if we can see the clock, maybe we can take a live look because they are now resuming the countdown. And Gio, I imagine there was a lot of excitement when that clock started ticking down again.
Well, that is exactly how I knew it was happening because everyone started cheering. There are people who are clapping still here, and they just keep coming. They keep coming because, again, these are all folks here at the Kennedy Space Center who have worked on this for so many years to get Orion into space. Because remember, you're talking about this monumental mission that eventually could create a lunar base and have that base serve as sort of a pit stop to the rest of the universe, including perhaps even Mars. That is years away, but this is the beginning, and we could see that history being made within 9 minutes and 11 seconds right there.
9 minutes, the countdown resumes. And Dr. Oluseyi, as I was mentioning earlier, as we know, President Trump is expected to address the American people tonight about the war. Similarly, in the 60s, we were in a time of war. Many people, when we went to the moon for the first time, it was an unsettling time, but many people describe that launch of Apollo 8 as a unifying moment in the country. Do you see some parallels between then and now?
Well, I do, but I have a biased look, right? So the oldest national astronomy organization, the Astro Society, and we're leading this Astronomy 250 celebration of 250 years of American astronomy in space. So I'm talking to the enthusiasts at all times. But at the same time, we do have challenges here in our nation and globally. And that's the thing about us humans, right? While awful things are happening, amazing things are happening. And this is a part of that amazingness that shows you what we're capable of when we work together. So let's keep doing more of this. Let's keep investing in our future.
Including today's launch, this Artemis II mission will last for 10 days. The centerpiece of it, that figure-8 slingshot move around the dark side of the moon. I do want to look and listen.
The astronauts took to.
After about a day in orbit, the engine on Orion's service module performs the critical translunar injection burn, a rocket boost that will send the astronauts on a free return trajectory toward the moon. This figure-8 flight path uses the Earth and Moon's gravity to take the astronauts around the moon and back home, a journey of more than 230,000 miles. It takes about 4 days to reach the moon, culminating with a lunar flyby. The crew will be the first people to see the far side of the moon in more than 50 years. NASA expects a communications blackout during this period. Earth's gravity then pulls Orion back during its 4-day trip home. Orion is equipped with a heat shield that keeps the crew safe from re-entry temperatures that can reach 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The Orion enters Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, using parachutes and the drag of the atmosphere to slow its descent to less than 20 miles per hour. The 10-day mission ends with Orion and crew splashing down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California.
And the crew access arm has been retracted. That's what we saw just a few moments ago. That's the way that the astronauts come and go from the spacecraft. And we have mentioned 4 astronauts on board. Reed Wiseman, former NASA chief astronaut, U.S. Navy test pilot. He has spent 165 days in space before. Sadly, his wife passed away years ago from cancer, and now as he leaves for the next 10 days, he leaves his young girls behind. Victor J. Glover Jr., NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy captain, actually will be the first black man to go to the moon and beyond. Christina Cook, Artemis II mission specialist. She holds the record for the longest single space flight by a woman. She spent 328 days in space, just shy of a year. Jeremy Hansen, Artemis II mission specialist, Canadian Space Agency astronaut. He will be the first non-American to go to the moon. He has joked that if something goes wrong, NASA will have to blame Canada. Gio, what's the clock telling us right now? Oh, 5 minutes, 16 seconds.
This is getting real, Lindsay. 5 minutes away, and that's just incredible. You know, one of the other things that's really awesome about these astronauts, because I've been able to speak with a lot of them, is that, for the lack of a better phrase, they're really down to earth. Aside from being so incredibly smart, they are so down to earth. They are real, amazing people. And one of the things they all tell me, all astronauts tell me, is that the moment they get up in space and they look out that window and they see that brilliant crystal blue ball of Earth, they see us all as one. And that's where it really hits them, and it really resonates that we are one in terms of being one human race. It's just quite incredible what they say. They call it a spiritual experience to be up there and see the Earth like that. And so, as you said, Christina Cook, 328 days in space, an incredibly long time in space already. You are talking about people who are truly space vets, and they are going up there now to do this incredibly monumental task.
And Reed Wiseman, to your point, Gio, talked about being down on Earth and looking up at the moon in recent nights and thinking, the next time I see the same sight from the ground, I will have been there. And you just have to imagine, Susan, that this moment is super exciting. You've been there before. Kind of walk us through the nerves, the excitement, just the magnitude of the moment.
It is pure excitement. I don't recall any nerves. Jeremy especially, this is his first flight, so this is his first opportunity to go into space. And pretty soon, everything's going to become on internal power. They will no longer be connected to external power. And then they've got 2 minutes to go.
And we're looking at pictures of you, Susan, when you were in space. Of course, astronaut is a Greek word for star sailor. Just walk us through what's going to happen. We know that it's just going to take 8 minutes, Susan, for them to get into orbit. Give us a little preview of what we're about to see here.
Okay, you're going to see the engine flight. And for those down at the Kennedy Space Center, they're going to feel it. 6 seconds later, those rockets are going to fire once the computer has determined that the engines are working well. And then off they go. And it's almost like it levitates off the pad. It's not like it zooms off the pad. It basically levitates off the pad. And then it quickly gets up within a minute, supersonic speeds. And in 2 minutes, the rockets are going to come off. And it goes up to, I think, 4 Gs to get to 17,500 miles an hour.
Almost approaching the 2-minute mark. Just want to listen in for a moment.
The lower stage of the rocket to internal, taking ground power away and now going to battery power.
GLS is go for upper stage to internal power.
All right, power is removed from the rocket's upper stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery. Same milestone for the lower core stage coming up at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds. Right now, the 4-person Artemis II crew is 248,000 miles away from the moon. And if all goes well, they will fly by it in 6 days.
GLS is go for core stage to internal power.
All right, there's the rocket's core stage, which houses 3 flight computers, is now on its own power. There's no more hold time because there's no more margin on these batteries. So we would have to recycle back to T-minus 10 to recharge if we had a hold.
One minute.
Right now, the rocket does not know what the T0 is, but coming up at T-minus 33 seconds, control shifts from the ground launch sequencer to the rocket's onboard autonomous launch sequencer, or ALS. The rocket will count itself down, but honor any holds that could come from the ground. Now, shortly after liftoff, Houston will take control of the rocket, and my colleague Gary Jordan will take over commentary.
GLS go for ALS.
Great call out. The rocket is on its own. 4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched. Sound suppression water is flowing.
15.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of Integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
AMT high.
On time passing 30 seconds into the flights. Integrity passes the alternate MECO. Target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the 4 main engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour.
Humanity's next great voyage begins We just heard it here. The baton has been passed from launch control in Florida to mission control in Houston. Gio, give us a sense of what you're seeing and feeling on the ground there.
Have you the same?
Lindsay, I cannot look away, quite frankly. I cannot look away because this is just so spectacular. You are talking about a spacecraft that has just made the entire ground here just shake. It vibrates up your body. I always tell people, make sure your feet are on the ground. Make sure that you are feeling it. And we are seeing a gorgeous, gorgeous liftoff here. There is not a cloud in the sky. All of Florida at this point should have been able to see that launch and still see this out in the sky, just as you're seeing it right there on TV right now. It's truly incredible. The sounds you feel, the emotion you feel as that vibration moves through your body. It's quite incredible, Lindsay.
A mission with so much promise. You see the faces there, all eyes looking upward, capturing this moment. The rocket boosters are about to separate. They have just separated. What a day for humanity and space exploration, Dr. Oluseyi.
Oh my goodness. I was holding my breath. I'm always both excited and scared during a launch. This is spectacular. I wish I was there.
No one really expects to be able to bear witness to something like this. As I said earlier, if you're under the age of 55, you haven't seen it. What does it mean to you to see this?
Well, this is a new frontier. We are now going back to that frontier of the moon. We are a new America. We are a new planet Earth. And now this is the next step. This is the very beginning. And hopefully this will become a common occurrence.
250,000-mile trip that they are about to take to get to the moon. Susan, give us a sense of your reaction here.
I think it was picture perfect. It couldn't have been any better. They've still got a few minutes before main engine cutoff when they get in orbit. But so far, everything's looking perfect.
And Dr. Ariane Anderson, I want to bring you in, if you can hear me. Give us a sense of the physiological changes that the crew is going through in this moment.
We see the same on board, Stan. And Houston has you loud and clear on Tigris at the common line.
Thrown back in their seats, which is part of the reason that they lay down flat when they load into the Orion capsule. And then once they reach that MECO, that main engine cutoff, they'll be waiting. Their bodies will start adapting over the next few hours and the next few days to be better prepared to live and work in space.
Talk to us about the medical system that's on board Orion and the health medical research that they have. Well, first, I do want to take a listen in again. Doctor, want to bring you back in there. Same question to you, the medical system on board on Orion and the health medical research that they have access to as well.
Well, at the cornerstone of this mission really is looking at how the human being integrates into a larger engineering system like a rocket ship. So a lot of the systems on the rockets, they behave predictably. We can test them to failure. But the human being often are prone to failure randomly. Tonight I could go home and have appendicitis. But then we also are resilient and innovative and creative. And so the big point of this mission is really to see how our human systems, how the life support systems help support our crew and make sure that this vehicle is the workforce we need to be as we push further and further to the moon and further into space.
Integrity, 3-engine press.
Integrity, of course, the name that the crew actually gave their spacecraft.
5 minutes, 20 seconds of mission elapsed time into the Artemis II mission. At this point, 3 good main engines are all that's needed to carry Integrity to a nominal main engine cutoff target. Though at this time, we're seeing 4 good engines here in Mission Control Houston. Integrity, 75 miles in altitude, 330 miles downrange, approaching 10,000 miles per hour.
10,000 miles per hour. We just saw a few fist pumps and, of course, applause there on the ground. And that capsule is the size of 2 minivans. So you have 4 people who are going to be spending the next 10 days. Of course, there's a little more space, actually, because no gravity in there. You can actually kind of float around above. Susan, I understand that it's typical for these missions for you to bring a little stuffed animal, and I understand that they have a little plushie that was actually designed by a second grader, a plushie toy named Rise, actually, and it is the official zero-G indicator, an object that basically is designed to indicate to the crew when they're able to float, because of course they are strapped in. Did you have something similar like that? So you kind of wait to see that stuffed animal float to get a sense of that you have reached the official zero-G.
Lindsay, we did not, and I don't know when that became popular, but as soon as the engine's cut off, even though you're strapped in, you float into the strap. And so you know it instantly.
Mission elapsed time. Throttling down as we approach the abort once around option. Milestone at the 7-minute 30-second mark.
And we are about to hear
now
main
84 miles
engine
an altitude,
cutoff, or MECO.
650 miles downrange, traveling more than 15,000 miles per hour.
Integrity, AOA open.
AOA open.
The window is now open for an abort once around option that would target splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. Still following nominal ascent at this time.
Dr. Oluche, give us an understanding of once they arrive at the moon in several more days.
Space Launch System core stage.
As we're hearing now, they're about to have the engine cut off in 10 seconds. They may not even have to really use their engines, because a lot of this slingshot maneuver, as we're describing, a lot of it, the pull of the gravity from the moon will bring them back.
Yes, when you are a physics student, sometimes you take a class called orbital mechanics. And what you learn is that motion in space is not like motion here on the surface of the Earth. You actually are doing orbits no matter where you're going.
We see the same on board, Stan.
Listening in for the clues to see where we are right now.
We have a nominal main engine cutoff heading in the right trajectory on the way to swing around the moon. Core stage has separated, done its job. The Space Launch System upper stage, the inner rim cryogenic propulsion stage, or ICPS, still attached to the Orion spacecraft.
Susan, it sounds like this has been a textbook launch. Everything has gone exactly as planned.
Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook.
That's exactly right, Lindsay. It was textbook.
At the beginning of their journey to the moon.
Dr. Anderson, I want to bring you back in here. I understand that you just returned from a Mars Desert Research Station in Utah, trying to understand how to survive in Mars, because that could be the ultimate step here that this mission is heading us toward. What did that entail?
Yeah, so we have a course at the University of Colorado where we take engineering students and we teach them kind of the fundamentals of medicine and how that might apply in a spaceflight environment. We believe that the solutions to a lot of the challenges around human health in spaceflight are going to require medical operations, they're going to require clinicians, and they're going to require engineers. And so our goal is to get folks together, put them through complex simulations, and start working the problem and figuring out how we can keep people healthy and happy and productive on the moon or Mars.
What are some possible medical advances in particular that could ultimately result from a mission like this?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we want to be sure that this vehicle performs the way we expect. One thing that people keep talking about is radiation. The radiation environment outside of the Earth's atmosphere and outside of the Earth's orbit is much higher. And so we want to better understand how high energy particles might affect human beings. And that can translate back to therapeutics and approaches to human health back here on Earth.
And of course, Dr. Oluche, you were mentioning earlier that there is this geopolitical race. Give us a sense of why we are trying to get back to the moon before China, for example.
Yeah, you have China, you have the European Space Agency, and you have a lot of private companies that are setting their sights on the moon. but yet and still, NASA is still the leader. And this is a demonstration of NASA's technical leadership. But one thing I also want to mention is we went to a visualization, and conspiracy theorists have hit on the fact that we get video close to ground, but then we go to a visualization in space. And that's because there isn't a second camera up there to look at the spacecraft. So it is not a conspiracy. It is the best you can do.
That is confirmed, complete. We also have the visors are confirmed up.
Susan, what are you watching for as a former NASA astronaut as you're watching these pictures?
Their launch and entry suit.
You know, I'm looking towards the next steps. So the next big one is the solar arrays deploying.
Now, not as
and if they don't deploy, they don't go anywhere. So they come back to Earth. And you know, so every step of the way, there's a burn coming up soon to circularize their low Earth orbit before they go into high Earth orbit.
Tasks of activating some of
I want to bring in historian Jim Bell, professor at Arizona State University, the School of Earth and Space Exploration. Thanks so much for joining us on this momentous occasion, Professor. You've talked before about this being a dress rehearsal at full scale. What did you mean by that?
Well, nobody has gone beyond low Earth orbit for more than 50 years. Right? So this crew, this amazing heroic crew, I still got goosebumps. They are pathfinders, right? They're pathfinders for the astronauts that are going to go back to the surface of the moon, pathfinders for the astronauts who are going to go on to Mars eventually. So it really is historic.
Of course, we heard from Susan earlier saying it at one point we're looking forward to the day when this is just about humans. But of course, this crew does represent a much more diverse humanity than Apollo did. You have the first woman, first person of color, first non-American to travel the lunar distance. What does that mean to you?
Well, look, I mean, these are incredible, heroic professionals, right? They're scientists, they're engineers, they're heavily trained individuals. They're representatives of the entire planet heading out to beyond our planet, out to our nearest celestial neighbor. So I'm incredibly proud of, all of us are incredibly proud of the work that they're doing, and the crew of the thousands of engineers and scientists and managers, administrators supporting them. It's really amazing.
And I want to bring in Cody Page, an engineer, professor of mechanical engineering at Columbia. Your reaction, Cody, as you watch this?
I'm so inspired, tearing up. I feel like I'm witnessing history. This is such an exciting moment for all of us. I'm, as a woman in engineering and I'm a Canadian, I feel especially attached to the crew that's going, and just seeing this is incredible. Really being a part of history right now.
What does this mean for space flight?
This is a huge moment for spaceflight. We talk about the Apollo era, we talk about the shuttle era, and this is truly the beginning of the Artemis era. This is a shift from humans being in low Earth orbit and our focus really being in low Earth orbit for so many years now, and going back into deep space. This is changing the focus of NASA and hopefully of countries around the world. As we can see, Canadians and there's payloads from different countries around the world that are part of this mission. This is the beginning of a new era.
It's my understanding that these astronauts are going to be able to see aspects of the moon, the far side of the moon, that have never been seen by human eyes before. What might we expect them to observe? And I also understand that they may lose communication with mission control for a period of time while the moon is blocking or kind of in between them and Earth for a short amount of time. But what might we be able to glean from them being able to see the far side of the moon?
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. They're going to be able to see parts of the moon that have never been seen before, and part of that I mentioned before that our brains are really the most exciting part of what's going there, and they're going to be looking at geological features on the lunar surface that can tell us about its formation, about where we're going to be going at the South Pole, about how we might find water ice on the moon, which is going to be extremely important when we have the Artemis IV astronauts go and be able to land on the surface of the moon. And a big part of going, the communication aspect of that and losing communication is being able to test this communication on the far side of the moon and be able to test in real time. So they're actually going to have scientists involved in this portion of the mission and be able to talk to the astronauts and discuss with them what they're finding. So part of that blackout is going to be the astronauts really making use of their knowledge of the geology of the moon.
And Cody, stay with us here. When NASA announced its intention to return to the moon, they said they were going back to stay. And recently they shared its blueprint for building a moon base. In the first phase of the $20 billion plan called Build, Test, Learn, they'll work with commercial space partners to send rovers, instruments, and technology to the lunar surface between now and 2028. In phase 2, between 2029 and 2033, they'll deliver the early infrastructure, building a semi-habitable area for astronauts. At this point, astronauts will be able to live and work on the moon's surface on a regular basis, which is really phenomenal. And during phase 3, slated for 2033 to 2036, NASA and its partners will deliver larger habitats and vehicles to the moon, establishing a permanent human presence on lunar surface. For the moon-based plan, NASA is going to need a lot of help from its commercial space partners, especially SpaceX and Blue Origin. Both companies are building lunar landers capable of transporting astronauts from the Orion capsule to the lunar surface. SpaceX is working on a version of its Starship spacecraft. Blue Origin calls its craft the Blue Moon Lander. NASA is planning to test these landers during the Artemis III mission in 2027, not on the moon, but in Earth's orbit. Artemis 4 and 5 in 2028 could see one or both of these lunar landers actually take astronauts to the moon's surface. And Dr. Olubshe, I want to bring you back in here because when we're talking about NASA and the history, it sounds like this really could be one of the last solo missions from NASA. This is really kind of old school NASA playbook, but we know that it is a little less expensive, still very expensive, but to use some of the private companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX. So in the next few steps of this phase, it sounds like these private companies will very much be a part of the plan.
Absolutely. And in a way, they always have been, right? And that's one of the big difficulties about creating a spacecraft like this, is the fact that you have all these components coming from multiple vendors that are providing systems that have to be integrated into one complete system that has to work flawlessly. But America has been really good throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century in funding fundamental research, turning that into commercial products, spinning off private companies, and you have this government, university, private company ecosystem that has kept us at the cutting edge of technology for the planet. And we need to continue investing.
Cody, I want to bring you back in here. We've talked quite a bit about radiation. Why is it so important to learn about radiation in deep space?
So in deep space, we experience radiation in two formats. So there's the galactic cosmic radiation, which is a consistent background radiation that comes from supernova deep in space. And this is these really fast, really heavy ions that can be extremely damaging for humans. And then there's also the danger of radiation that can come from solar particle events. So these are flares that are coming from our sun that we sometimes see in our magnetosphere, and these can be very dangerous. There were some Apollo missions that came very close to some solar particle events. So we want to better understand that radiation in deep space so that we can make sure that for future missions we're able to protect our astronauts from that radiation.
Gio, I want to go back to you. Give us a sense, are the crowds still there, kind of basking in the afterglow, so to speak, or are people packing up?
They're basking, but they're starting to get back to work because they were here working. But you know, Lindsay, it struck me as I was watching, all of our hearts were racing as we approached that final countdown. I'm sure that's what you felt too. And so I've asked astronauts, what is it that you're feeling in those final moments when you're there on that spaceship? And basically, I was trying to find out, how do you deal with all that stress? It could help all of us, right? And they basically say, you know what, Gio? We relax into it because we've prepared. And what we witnessed today here was that preparation to make history.
We all witnessed that preparation. And Susan, I want to bring you back in here to give us a sense of why it's so important for humans rather than machines to take this voyage.
You know, machines can do a lot, but they can't do everything. You know, back in the original Apollo days, machines could not have picked all the particular rocks per se. They, you know, so we need the people and the machines. There is a role for both.
Dr. Oluseyi, I've been seeing you kind of, you know, bouncing your knees around, went from maybe nerves to just excitement. How are you feeling going forward?
Joy. I am feeling intense joy. I had some nervousness, I had some excitement, but now it's turned to joy. They're in orbit. The hardest, most dangerous part of the mission before re-entry is done. And now, you know, they're getting busy doing the science. I can only imagine how ecstatic they are on board. They have tasks to do. But when you're a scientist, when you're an engineer, you love doing that work. And I have to say, as a former Navy seaman, go Navy, right? We got half the crew is former Navy.
And I understand, too, that Nat Geo was able to give the astronauts on board cameras, train them how to use cameras. This is the first time we're going to see smartphones in use inside that capsule. What kind of images? Because we all remember the black and white grainy images of the moon from more than 50 years ago. What kind of visuals will we be able to bring back 10 days from now?
You'd be surprised, right? When I was at NASA, I managed a program out of Johnson Space Center where they were actually using the astronauts' own photographs through the window of the space shuttle in order to do science here on Earth. And now they're going to do the same thing for the moon.
Dr. Oluseyi, our thanks to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
To all who has been a part of our team and our crew here at ABC News, we thank you so much. Artemis II is now on its way. We will follow its journey and track every milestone. For now, we return you to your regular programming. For some of you, that's World News Tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lindsay Davis.